Alright, my GT3 style front bumper for the Boxster just arrived from KBD. This box is pretty smashed up real here, but I opened it with the UPS guy before he left just to make sure there was no real damage in here. So let me open this up, show you how it comes. Okay, open this side, you're welcome. And I also ordered the mesh with it, which is like a plastic mesh, which is kind of surprising. I was expecting that to be metal, but oh well. So this is it. As you can see by their instructions here, you're supposed to open it and then leave it out in the sun for 15 minutes and it opens. So it is sunny and super hot right now, so let's go ahead and do that. Okay, we're gonna leave it here in the sun for 15 minutes and see what happens. I'm gonna put a piece of cardboard underneath it so it doesn't scratch as it moves and expands. But all right, I just tore their box down some, spread it out, set the bumper on it, so we'll see what happens here. Okay, the next step is to scrub our bumper down just with some Ajax and water just to get it nice and clean. So, okay, as you can see after that step, it's starting to look a little scratched up and dull. So it's working, we're getting off the stuff that will make the paint not stick. All right, I got the bumper up on some sawhorses. I'm doing things kind of backwards. The way I would suggest, actually, I just kind of forgot about this stuff, is first I want to spray it with this stuff by SEM. It's a plastic and leather prep, and it's going to help us get rid of all of the mold release agents that are needed to get polyurethane out of the mold that they use. And of course, paint is not going to stick to that very well. That's the point of that stuff. So this will help us get rid of it. So I'm going to spray this on, scrub it in on a dry bumper, then get it all off, rinse it off. Okay, now we're going to go over the bumper again using the Ajax, this time using these 3M scouring pads that I got on Amazon. I'll give you a link. They are supposed to be around 800 grit. We're going to go over it in detail, get in all the little nooks and crannies, so by the end of it there shouldn't be any shiny parts on it. There's still a few right now, but we'll go over it one more time, and this will also take off any of the residue of that plastic prep in case any of that's still on there. Alright, we can see that it's pretty rough from the mold in a couple spots. Actually, running your finger over it, you can't really feel it. It actually feels a lot smoother than it looks. It's more a discoloration there. There's a couple spots where you can feel just a little bit. So I'm probably going to go over this another time with the Ajax and the scouring pads just to get it as smooth as I can. Okay, the next step is to get the bumper off of this thing so that we can fit our new one on. Alright, there's no reason that you have to raise the car for this, but when you have a QuickJack, there's no reason not to. So I'm going to raise it to the first stop so that I have a little more room to work with under there. Okay, our first step should be removing 4 of these with a flathead screwdriver. However, looks like I only have 2. Looks like somebody forgot to replace them, so it's just a 90-degree turn, and then they should pop right out. Okay, now we should be able to just pull this black cover out. Start in the middle where I can grab it. There we go. Carefully just take it out. Feed it under here. Like that. Next are 2 Phillip heads to remove. One here, one here. Take these guys out and you'll see they have a little piece here that goes with them. Keep that. Okay, the next thing we want to do is remove these indicators. They are just in here by pressure, so if you start from the outside, it will unclip and then you can pull it towards you gently. And you can see this was locked in there. Here's our pressure clip, and now we just have to disconnect the bulb here. Okay, yeah, you can just twist and remove the bulb. You don't need to take the bulb out of here because we're going to be putting this bulb back in our new light. Now once the reflector is out of the way, you can see that there's a Phillips right here. We have to remove. Now remove the one on the other side as well, including the reflector. Okay, this is kind of hard to see. I turned the driver's side wheel all the way to the right so that you can see a little bit under the wheel well here, and you'll see that there's a plastic rivet here that we have to wiggle free. Okay, pull it out and then get under this, pry it out. Got stubborn. Make sure this is pulled out all the way. Seems to be. I think it's just been on here so long. I'm going to hit this with a little WD-40 to loosen it up. But anyway, there's one here, and then there's a second one. Where are you, second one? Second one is back here at the tip of my tool. So I got to pull those two out. Alright, I'm going to hit this with a little bit of this PB Blaster. Let that soak for a second. And give it another go. Aha. Got it. Ready to go. Rolled into the car. So that's what those are. Now I'm probably gonna have to turn the wheel back to get that other one because it's way deep in there. Yep, okay, wheel back in the straight position, and I can put my hand above the wheel and reach under it since the car is raised to get to this one. Let's take that one out. So let me pull that out. Okay, on this back one I finally gave up and just took the wheel off, and as you can see, after much struggle and pressure, that thing finally just snapped. So gonna need a new one of those. Alright, just inside the fender well where this light, where your corner light is, there's one more of these plastic rivets to get out. Alright, the next step is to get your pry tool under here, and we're going to pull back this inner fender liner. Pull it away from the bumper here. Yep. And you can see it. So yeah, just pull it away right there. Alright, next is a tricky part. There's one more Phillips screw that you have to get out, and you can actually, on mine, see the tip of it sticking through right here. So the fender well that we just pulled out, you can reach under and you can actually feel it right here. So you have to take your Phillips screwdriver and stick it through there, under here, and take that out. Alright, I got it. This is what it's going to look like. Okay, now when we go under the bumper, there are these Phillips screws. Here. Wow, you can see this terrible paint job that they did on this bumper. Here. And I'm going to take the screw off, just paint over it. Here, so just take all these screws off of the bottom. And don't forget this one and the one on the other end. Okay, in theory, that's everything, and you can just pull the bumper straight off. Let's see. One more screw over here. Ah. It's off. Aha. Here's that wire everybody talks about. It's the hidden reach under there. Hood release mechanism. Okay, I've heard how nasty my radiators are going to be. So, let's see. Alright, this is what it looks like with the bumper off, and a good time for my advertisement to please like this video and subscribe to my channel, and I'll keep these how-tos coming. Thanks a lot. Okay, that wasn't easy, but with two people I was able to wrestle this thing, not on exactly, but on at least enough to stay there. There's no hardware holding it in, it's just pressed in up top and around the edges. But I think we have a little problem, because if you look under here, this tab is fine, it's supposed to slide under that thing, but this tab is where a hole is supposed to be drilled in to attach it. So yeah, they were way off on that. So I don't know what I'm gonna do yet. Gotta call and ask about this. Alright, so we're ready to mark the holes. So I just went ahead and closed the trunk and just pushed on here to make sure it looks like it's really lined up. Has a little bit of a gap here, but not too much to get it how I like it to look. And then I'm going to open the hood and mark. Alright, so this is where our screw is going to go. So I'm just going to make a little mark using a paint pen here, and another mark right there. Okay, gonna have a look under the car now, and as I noticed before, where this is supposed to be going on this tab, it's not gonna line up, so just make sure I'm gonna put a screw in here to keep this thing sturdy. And according to Jan, who I talked to on the phone just now, he is using his with just the hardware down here in the middle attached, and the stuff down on the corners, which there will be a screw somewhere over here holding the corner on. And he said he's been driving around just fine with that. I have not called KBD to ask them about their suggestion yet, but I suppose I will in a little bit, just to see what they have to say. So I did notice that in order to pull this all the way tight on the corner, this piece right here, the bumper is going to need to go this way some more. This is the bumper, this is plastic that's attached to the car, and it's hitting right here. So I'm going to go ahead, and since this is not an important piece, I'm going to trim right here, just so that, well, let's see, I say that, but maybe this will slide over it. Yeah, I suppose it can slide over that piece, so guess I might not need to trim it, because this tab down here is going to be tucked in like that. If I pull this back down, yeah, I think I'll be able to, yeah, this corner looks like I'll be able to get this tight and get our liner tucked in right here. Okay, so I'm just gonna fiddle around down here and figure out the basics on what I need to know. Try to figure out where a couple of these holes are gonna be drilled, and I'll probably be taking this on and off a few times just to make sure everything's lined up correctly. All right, according to these instructions online, you kind of try to match up your old bumper to the new one, draw on there, and cut out the marks. Another method they suggest is putting some clear tape on your OEM bumper and then transferring that tape over to the new one so you can draw where the cutouts and screw holes are. So That's one option. If they do that, they say to use some scissors and a Dremel to smooth it all out, make it look like this. My concern with doing this is that I'm not so sure that this cutout here lines up very well with the cutout on mine, considering that these two tabs on mine don't line up and work. So I might, while the bumper is on the car, as a test, I might just try to mark where the holes go and drill them out, see if they fit that way. Okay, I marked this here just kind of by eyeballing it, peeling this back, looking at where the screw is going to have to go in. It's right around there, and then underneath here made a couple more marks. So this is broken off on this side, but I have it on the other side. There is a little flap, almost like a little mud flap type thing here, that has 3 holes, 1, 2, and 3. The third one is under here, so I marked this to trim this piece off in case I ever want to add that back. And it looks like it's going to attach right here. On this side there was actually a little divot from the mold to mark the screw hole for me. That was not there on the other side, but I think I'm going to mark it the same on the other side and trim it the same as well. Since the air openings on the front of the new bumper are going to be a lot wider, you're going to be able to see, at least until I put the mesh on there, this black kind of scoop around the radiators. So this is the original, all dirty and nasty, so I just used some wheel cleaner to clean this rubber piece, get that nice and shiny. Alright, now we just drill out our holes with a drill. So the next thing I did after fitting this back on the car was take some tin snips and I just cut around this piece here because it was hitting at and overlapping, not allowing me to get this corner up close enough to where it needs to screw in. And I marked this one here. Luckily I hadn't drilled it yet. I just drilled this under here because I think that's more the location of where this is going to go. I'm going to try to put the screw back in there. Alright, after a lot of frustration and this not fitting, coming back to it, this is where I ended up. So this painted screw, as you can see, I got to fit into one of the 2 holes, one of the correct holes where it's supposed to go, but this one here, where I drilled this hole right here, it's actually supposed to go into that hole right there. And by looking at the other side, I can tell that I'm missing a little plastic or a little metal clip where the screw goes into, because this one, that's why it turns out I didn't realize there were 2 screws on the other side, because the first side that I took apart, this part was broken, and the piece on the bumper was broken, so this was never being used to hold it on. And unfortunately, as you can see, I've already trimmed away too much of that. If I had not trimmed it, it would fit, or it would at least extend over that hole, and I would have a chance of drilling, getting a new metal piece, making that fit. So I might have to use a zip tie on that to hold it in, unfortunately, because of this tight fit. And also, I didn't think there was any way that this was going to line up with the with that metal bracket. You can just barely see it back there, but now that I have it on the bottom, I think this has enough flex. I can push it tight against there and get that attached, so we'll see. Alright, back to working on this again. As you can see, this lip right here if you tuck it under this piece, it still hits that right there. It doesn't allow this screw to get all the way where it needs to get to this metal plate right here. It's dark, sorry, but that's where it's needs to get to. So after talking to Jan some more, I bought some of these guys on Amazon so that I can pull this piece back out and start trimming up here. I'm gonna start trimming this until it can get flush enough. Alright, sorry about the fan noise, but it's kind of warm in here. I'm gonna resort to a Dremel to work on this some more because that cutting thing is not that great. But as you can see, I have started trimming on this corner some. It's mostly the corner right here. It seems to be blocking it, so I need to knock some more of that off. Alright, Dremel is much faster, much easier. But here is the dilemma, now that I have some light on here. So this little wall of the bumper here either hits this piece of plastic, and when it does that, it seems to line the seam up fairly well and allows a place where you would cut for the screw hole to be far enough over this way to get into that metal bracket. However, it's still really too low. It needs to be moved up higher, and if it moves up higher, it's gonna have to come over even more that way to line up to it. Or this, it seems like this wall would have been put there to come over and overlap. Sorry, I pushed that one end. To come over and overlap that wall, and in which case the screw hole is even more out of place, even though it does pull the front nice and tight. But the other problem is the screw hole in here, where you can see where they think the screw hole should be is right there. Let's see if I can show you this. The actual screw hole where it needs to go into is that darker piece right there. So there's no way that that is going to get over here to where the darker hole is. So this metal bracket came off of the old bumper, so I can slide it to wherever I need it to be. So if I want it to line up with this black hole, I'm gonna have to move it over here, in which case I could probably, yeah, looks like there's enough material on here to get it lined up over there. So it would go there, so I don't know what that marked hole is supposed to be for. So to me it looks like this wall is supposed to line up on top of there, but if you do that, this is way too far away from this for the screw to be long enough to get to it. Like the tip of the screw couldn't even get to that metal bracket. So I have a call in to KBD. Hopefully they're gonna call me back when they open. I sent them an email and I was not very excited about their first response. So hopefully it gets better from here. Okay, well here we are again, trying to figure out how to best attach this screw. into here, into where we need to go, and determine that it is not long enough. I've had a couple calls into KBD, and they still have not returned my call to give me any suggestions here, so we're just plowing ahead. After talking to Jan again yesterday, what he did is he just got longer hardware, which makes sense to me. So went to Lowe's and found this number 10 1-inch screw, which is just a tiny bit longer, but I thought that I might need a little bit longer, so these are 1 1/4 inch. Number 10's right here in stainless. So I'm going to see if this one will work first, and if not, move up to a slightly longer one. And also, I think I'm going to need to re-drill this hole up a little higher and all the way to the corner, which in the instruction manual that they have, it looks kind of like where the first guy did it. And then I'll probably take a Dremel and Dremel out a little of the inside here, so that this piece right here that acts as a washer can kind of tuck up under it to get all the way as far over as we can, and with a little extra length, hopefully that will work. And I did realize that this slip here, the new light that we have, indicator here that fills in this slot, has two little like feet on it that are going to hook underneath that to keep it in place. So we do have to at least move it over this way far enough for those feet to catch on there. Okay, so this is the 997 side markers that are required to go with this. So as I line it up here, you can see that the mold isn't very great up here on the top, so I'm going to use a Dremel to make the line coming up straight and open up this corner here so that this can go all the way flush. So let me do that real quick. Alright, I just took my time there, slowly trimming just a tiny bit at a time. As you can see, it's a much better fit now, and these are the little feet that are hooking back behind there. So once I get it on there, I can pull, and they have a little bit of tiny bit of grab back there. Might even want to shave a little bit off the back of this to make it a little bit thinner, so these feet can grab on. Actually, as you can see, it's just the top one that doesn't have a lot of space behind it to grab on. The bottom one, it's a lot wider. So okay, here is a side-by-side comparison of our OEM 986 light with the 997, and as you can see, this hook that grabs on the back is completely different than the stock one. So the stock one, let me show you, right here is where the clip, you push it and the clip hooks onto the back of this bracket right here, towards the back of where our turn signal goes. So you can see how this would, once you push it in, it would catch the lip of that bracket right there, because it actually goes in this direction. So this part would push past the bracket, and this is what's locking it in place. So when you pull it out, it just bends this in and pops out like that. Okay, so this one would have the same effect right here, but as you can see, this one is taller. The place where it hooks on is further back, so this one does not reach in far enough to clip on there with the bumper. So I'm gonna have to manipulate this somehow, I think. It would be nice to just pull this out and replace it onto this one, but Jan told me he tried that and he couldn't get this thing out, so I'm gonna try to come up with a plan here. Okay, so let me try to show you this when I am trying to hold the bumper in place where I think it will go eventually. This side marker, the tab on it there is actually hitting the bracket. Can't see it as it does it, but the tab is actually hitting this bottom corner of the bracket here. So I think I'm going to shave off a little of that, and hopefully that will allow this thing to clip on there. So let me Dremel a little bit of that off. Okay, so I trimmed this corner piece back a little bit, and that does allow this to fit in there at least now. It just doesn't grab enough, I don't think, to keep it in place when you're driving. It's kind of loose. Also, this little tab coming down rubs against this when trying to put it in, so I think I'm going to shave this down a little bit right now too. Alright, I didn't shave it all the way off, but shaved it down to give it a little more clearance. Okay, it's not a terrible fit anymore, though we still do have kind of a gap here, but now our light kind of clips in and it takes a little bit of wiggling to get it to pop out. So maybe as good as we're going to get for right now. Okay. Kind of loose, but alright for right now. As far as this gap goes, take this back out. Jan was telling me on his, he just took this whole bracket assembly off and could move it up. So, but mine here at least, it's all the way up as high as it goes. There are one screw there, and then one screw further back in there that you can take off. But sorry. So this is where the bumper slides under, and there are these little tabs in a couple places that are all the way up against. Let me see if I can show you one of these tabs. Like this tab right here. It's attached to this bracket that is all the way up against the top. And over here, so I mean, I guess in theory I could shave those tabs down and undo this and the other one and try to slide this up a little higher to close in some of this gap. So maybe in the future I will do that, but for now I think I'll go back to trying to get this attached here by re-drilling using our longer screws. Okay, so the other thing I'm just noticing as far as this gap goes is that there's a gap, and then the bumper hits right here on the bracket because the bracket kind of tapers off. Ugh, gosh, it's really hard to see here. So the bracket tapers off and then disappears over there. So if I were to cut this bracket right here or Dremel it down so it was more flat against the car, I think that we could raise it up, eliminate a little bit of this gap, and also make this hole almost high enough to get into where we need to go. So I'm going to do that. Alright, after a lot of trimming, a smarter, more prudent person would obviously take this bracket off and trim it away from the vehicle, but I know I'm getting this whole thing repainted anyway, so not a big deal here. So as you can see, it did raise it just a little bit. So it did eliminate a little bit of the gap here, which is good. Now we still need to re-drill this hole because, as you can see, it needs to go a little higher and more inside to get it all the way there. So I'm going to re-drill up here in the corner like my original plan was. Oh, and also now I can mark where this hole needs to be drilled, since I know what position this is going to be, just going to end up in. Alright, I tried fitting this light in with this part raised up over this little indent and up against it both ways, and I feel like it needs to go in a little further to be flush with the light, like this, all the way up against the back. So I'm going to trim the bumper again right around this little notch, so this notch doesn't prevent it, but it comes to a rest against this here. Alright, you can see I trimmed just that little corner. Everything can go tight here, and I'll mark where our screw here goes and drill this. Okay, I took my marker, stuck it up through here, felt with my finger where the hole was, stuck the marker up, marked it. So now there is a mark just to make sure that plate was in the right place. Alright, that hole is drilled. This second hole is drilled. Now let me just Dremel around the edge here. Okay, a couple things learned with this second hole drilled. Now I can see the bracket in there, and I can see that this one is actually going to be too high, and when it's up against the edge, even if I Dremel in there, I would have to Dremel a lot to get this thing to fit in the hole. So plan C, I think, is where it actually needs to be drilled, is right against the edge, right against the corner in there between the middle of these two holes. And I'm not going to be able to get one of these things in there, so in that case I'm going to drill a smaller hole and just have the head of the screw come up against the material here instead of using a washer like this. So let me try that. Alright, third hole drilled. It was 9/64 bit or something like that. So one thing I just realized about these that I just bought is this collar does not just come off. So I'm going to have to cut that thing off to just use the screw here. Just take a second, use my tin snips to chop it up, pull that thing off. Okay, so that third hole is not going to work because the head of the screw is just going to pull through that. So this sucks that I have all these holes drilled in here now, because I need this one to be bigger and angled in the corner. So I guess I'm just going to have to Dremel out an area big enough to get this washer thing in there without affecting the surface of the bumper here. So let me try that. Alright, well, this has not been fun. So once drilling a hole in the corner and cutting away the edge there so that I could fit this in there, it's actually not thick back there, it's thin, so it's cut all the way through the bumper there. So this is not very sturdy, but it screws in at least. So I'm going to have to fill in a lot of these holes and cuts around here when it gets painted in order to make it sturdy enough so it's not going to rip. As you can see, I got this bottom one screwed in now and it's in place. Still has a little gap. When I put this one in, it pulled that back down kind of to where it was before. So ideally, if I had this to do all over again, I would put that screw all the way up against the edge. I would have to, but go just a hair lower on that. Okay, I finally got this thing in. I had to bend that bracket pretty far, but as you can see, I'm pulling on it really hard now. It's fairly sturdy, but as far as fitment, you can see that the bumper has to go this low in order for the light to fit in here, because the light is taller than the bumper, and the bumper actually sticks out a little too far down here. Even though I cut that tab back to press this in even further than it would have gone. To get that part in, and we have some overlap here. The light continues well here, but the bumper is too far here, even though it's all the way flush here. So there's going to be some gap around here. So yeah, not perfect fitment by any means. My biggest complaint is probably here. It's a pretty big gap. They could have made this longer here to fit back underneath there, cover that gap. But the front looks awesome. And now I have to do the same thing over here. And of course I undid the screw at the bottom so that I could be taking this off and messing with it. So I'm going to put the screw back on the bottom on this side, see how that looks. Alright, it was almost impossible to push this thing up hard enough to get the original screw going into the hole where it needs to go into, so I used those 1.25 inch stainless screws. So it had a long enough reach where I could look through here and guide it into the hole and then screw it in and tighten it. And as you can see, as it tightened, it created this gap here on the inner fender well here, and bows the bumper out some. So let's see what that does to the top up here. So let's see, that's still attached. It kind of emphasizes how this is off up here though. So you can see how everything looks. And again, if we go down here, while I was doing all my trimming, this hole right here where my finger is where there is supposed to be a little metal bracket that had broken off on mine. Sorry, this is terrible here. So this hole is supposed to line up with this bracket back here, but I've already shaved too much off for that to work, so I can just put a zip tie through there if I want, or I'll just probably hope that this one is strong enough to hold it on, since it was strong enough to hold the OEM bumper on with only one. But on the other side there will be two holes. Okay, on this side it looks like we have an even bigger problem, because if I pull this tight up against the bracket like we had it on the other side, we have a huge gap right here, and that's not right. If we tuck this back under and pull it all the way tight over here. Okay, so this isn't even tight yet, and you can see where we have the options to drill, and where this is, once we pull it back, that screw hole becomes like over here. So there's no way to drill it and attach it over here. So I don't know what I'm gonna do yet. The only option I can think of at all right now is to take this bracket off, attach the bracket back here, and slide the whole bracket that way, see if it can even slide. So I guess I'm gonna give that a shot. Okay, I took the bumper back off, marked a couple places where I need to trim off, remarked where these holes for the middle should be, and this is gonna let me get back to this bracket. So I'm gonna take this off and this off, and this looks like it is actually meant to slide left and right. So we'll go do that. Let me see what this one looks like. Yeah, this one looks like it's kind of in the middle position. It seemed to work all right. So I guess I'm just gonna adjust this side over here. All right, there's one more Phillips right here that you have to loosen as well. But unfortunately, after I loosen this, it doesn't slide back any further. You can adjust it up and down ever so slightly. So I'll adjust it as high as it will go, but it's that's as low as it goes, that's as high as it goes. I think it was already pretty much as high as it goes. But yeah, this does not slide back and forth. So I guess that bumper just does not fit. Okay, here's that bracket all the way removed. One very minor adjustment that we can do is this bracket is where we screw that bumper in, and it can actually take this here and slide it over. Just a fraction. Okay, there it is, slid all the way over to the right as far as it can go. I suppose we could modify this bracket further by shaving off some of this, and there's a little tab that stops it from moving over any further back here. I suppose we could shave those down and move this tab all the way flush almost to here. So that would give us a little more stretch, but it's still not gonna line up right. I don't think that bumper is just too long. Okay, here's the bracket. After I modified it, you can see I shaved a little off the right. I also had to widen the hole so that when we slide the bracket over, it can still fit through. And then you can kind of see this ridge is on this side, and I shaved it off on that side. Now when I press that bracket back on, I can get it all the way over to the right, and it's as far over that way as it can go. So the piece that I was blindly cutting off while it was still attached to the car was this little notch right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut that off while it's off the car. Alright, surprisingly, with everything I learned from the first side, I got this side done in about 20 or 30 minutes. And I think this light, I mean, it's off in slightly different ways, but still have the gap. I'm gonna have to remove this I guess it's a plastic film that's supposed to be there so that the original bumper can press up tight against it and not stick. But it obviously shows here with the gap, so I'm gonna have to remove that. And there's a really big gap here. And on the other side, it's a pretty noticeable gap. Lights don't fit or line up perfectly here, but overall, from a distance it looks good. And I'll still need to add the grates down here, but I'll probably get it painted first. And let me close the hood here and see how this looks. So I actually lined that seam up fairly well. I thought that I could get it a little bit tighter, but as you can see right here, the hood release is actually already just barely touching it, and if I have it any tighter, it's can't slide that hood release there. So, all right, it's on. All right, I sent KBD a picture of this gap, and they first I sent them a picture of my problems getting this fitted, and they suggested a couple things, which is essentially what I did on my own before I heard back from them. Got that to fit, and so they replied back this morning, and I replied back to them with the picture of this big gap here, and they said that they were going to send me out a new bumper. So in order to do that, though, they wanted me to destroy this one, just so that I'm not, you know, scamming them by getting two bumpers out of them. So this is gonna hurt my heart a little bit, but I'm about to destroy this bumper. Definitely not looking forward to doing all of this work again, but they promised a better fit from the new one, so oh gosh, this is sad, sad day. I'll do this at home. All right, I'm gonna keep cutting this. All right, that makes me kind of sad, but I think that's considered destroyed. All right, KBD sent me another bumper. We're gonna try this again since the other one had a gap in it. They said that this one should work, so we're gonna do it again. All right. This all looks very familiar. Nice and slimy. Okay. All right, there she is. I'm gonna put her out in the sun and let it expand. First thing I noticed right off the bat about this one is I'm pretty sure that these indentations here were actually cut out in the original one, and here they're not, so that's interesting. All right, I've got the new bumper back, new one that they sent me, so I'm starting the whole process over again, just trying to get a good fit up here, mark it so I can drill it and attach it up there, so then I can go around and start doing the other parts. So just at a cursory glance, this one seems to fit much better so far, but I won't really know until I attach it on the top and then on the bottom, because the bottom of this one is actually a lot more curved still than my last one. Seemed to come out pretty flat, so once I screw that in on the bottom, get it attached flat, then I can kind of see how it's going to stretch around the sides. Alright, like I mentioned, the original one had these nice and cut out under the headlights, so I'm just going to do the same thing over here with the Dremel. I don't know if they're going to hit anything under the headlight, but Jan had mentioned that they hit under his, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Already I'm feeling much better about this one. All I have attached so far is the 2 screws in the top, middle here, and then 3 on the bottom. And you can already see that there's not a gap there anymore. This is coming around. I don't have to do any weird cutting or anything crazy over here. And the screw hole is going to fit nicely there, it looks like. Even the inner fender lining, it's going to line up a lot better. I haven't messed with the bottom corner yet, that might change things. But underneath, I just have these, let's see, 1, 2, 3 in here. So originally, after I did the 2 on the top, when I set this down, they were way far away, so I had to push really hard, push the bumper in this way to pull them up over the holes where they go. And this fits in the slot again. That wasn't even, they weren't even lined up. It looked like they weren't going to fit until I just pulled it and muscled it into place there. And this time what I did is I just kind of looked under from this side to see where the hole was supposed to be, and I used the smallest drill bit I had to drill up into there, and I got 2 of them right the first time. One of them I missed a little bit, had to move it over, but with those little drill bits I could just come in with the 1/4 inch afterwards and it won't make any difference. And I just did it all from under the car, pulled the flap down a little bit, drilled in with the 1/4 inch drill bit, and screwed them right in without taking the bumper back off. And actually on the first bumper, this tow hook was way off, and actually if I hold the camera kind of straight, it's still off a little bit, but you can raise the bumper up some, which when it's finally in place it might be raised up some more. But yeah, the other tow hook was like way over here on the other one, and there was no way I was gonna ever be able to use that. We had to actually use the rear one instead. And this side also looks like it's lined up nicely, and this is just set in place. And also, let's see if I can pull this back some. So yeah, there's the little bracket that it's going to screw into, and it looks like it's going to line up much more nicely. And so I can put the bracket from the other one back on here and mark where that hole is going to be again. Drill that, and drill a little hole in here for our other one that's going to hold it up. Now I'm going to work on the bottom and see how well those will attach. Alright, I want to show you this side finished. I just knocked this one out, and it overall looks pretty good. There is still a tiny gap in here, but it's much better than the last bumper. See how that looks when it gets painted. But in general, this one is fitting a lot better. So over here, I'll show you what I did on that side. So this lip that comes back here is still a little too long. It hits here, which looks okay like this, but what I didn't realize is once I attach this screw here, it's going to pull this in a little bit tighter, and then the back side will be sticking out and not flush all the way across. So I dremeled off a little bit of this edge again, put the clip back on there, drilled a hole here so I can attach this clip. Drilled a hole right about here, all the way up against the edge, and I was able to get a screw in there. I'll probably end up getting a longer
screw still because I can only turn the screw about one rotation of threads that catch before it starts pulling this in and deforming it. So I'll attach it here and here. I already have it attached down at the bottom. Hey Millie, say hi. And she's helping me out today. So after I get those two in, I should be able to put our bulb back in the light and snap the light in there. And that's all that's left on this side. Okay, here you can see the bracket is attached with the screw that comes up from the bottom. And this is where I drilled this hole to go through, and still using the same ones I bought at the store that are a little longer still than the stock ones. Okay, this screw has to go straight back, so the washer is going to hit the edge of this. So instead of cutting through this like I did last time and it made it kind of flimsy, what I think I'm going to do is try to shave off one side of the washer to have it flat so that it can fit in and the screw can still go straight instead of getting pressed at an angle. Alright, that didn't take long to get that side flat. Alright, it is all on now, so little gap here, not as bad as before. A little more of a gap in the hood than there was, I think. Gap on this side is a little bit, and right here, unfortunately, is where I tried to cut those grooves out and cut too far. So I'm gonna have to get that patched up when I get it painted. So other than that, this one went on 100 times easier. I don't know if it's because, a lot of it's probably because of my familiarity with it now, but in general, let's see, let's back up. See the whole thing, it's 1/2 inch shade now. But overall, I think it looks good, and I ordered the mesh from them too. I forgot if I showed you this already or not, but it is like plastic mesh if you order it from them. So I'm gonna try to get that on down here in the vents after I take it back off and have it painted, but I guess that is what it looks like. And the original one that I had to destroy to get this other one, I drove around with it for probably close to a month between me getting it on, getting this new one in, and having time to fit it, and it was fine, never any issues driving it the way that it was attached. So drivability wise seems fine. It is lower than the stock one, so I would scrape it some if I went over. I'd have to, go slow or at an angle as usual. So I'll put the wheels back on and lower it down and get this thing painted. So please give me a thumbs up and like the video, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and I will show you guys what it looks like when it's painted.